Hey, looks like we're live. All right. Well, if you don't know me, my name is Marc, and I am known on YouTube as Truepokerdealer. I've been on YouTube since 2011, 2012, teaching people to be poker dealers, and I've been working in casinos since back in 2007, working in poker since back in 2007. I've had a lot of fun on YouTube over the years, and today I decided to do just a regular QA. I wanted to be available for you guys. I didn't want to be in Texas Card House like the last couple. Just because, wearing a mask and trying to do all this talking can be a little bit tough, and I sort of wanted to say hey and have it be more focused, where I was just here, available to answer questions and chat with everybody. And in my downtime today, I've been dealing a lot of hours lately, more than probably want, if I'm being honest, which is fine. I mean, they ran a big event at Texas Card House in Dallas. It was actually at all the Texas Card House properties, and it was a 500K guarantee, $800 buy-in this past weekend, and I got to deal a bunch of that. And I mean, the prize pool for a 500K guarantee, the prize pool ended up being like 1.2 something million, which was pretty cool. Someone said it was the largest prize pool for a tournament in Texas history. I don't know that that's true, but that sounds pretty cool. But yeah, it was a really interesting experience, and dealing at Texas Card House this whole time has been pretty fun. Um, and so yeah, we're here. I'm here today to answer your questions, and I'm here to sort of enjoy some time with you guys, if I'm being honest. And I'll start out by talking about something that happened in a daily $130 buy-in 3K guarantee tournament yesterday. So I'm dealing the final table of this tournament. I would think it was only 4 tables or so. Maybe they got about 60 players. And something really interesting happened. So when you get in these markets with inexperienced players, and what I mean is they're not necessarily inexperienced at playing the game of poker, but a lot of the time they can be pretty inexperienced when it comes to what it's like playing in an actual poker room with the rules and everything like that. Uh, the the natural thing that people do is stuff that happens a lot of the time at home games. So I was dealing, there were 5 people left in the tournament, and there was a player at the table that literally, this is how the whole thing went. Somebody goes all in, their stack is very large, they're the biggest stack at the table, and they were using 5K and 1K chips. And they had a stack of 5K chips that was probably about well, it was almost the biggest stack at the table. They had a stack of 5K chips. It was probably about maybe 40 chips high. So they go all in and they push it, and it's all stacked up. Now I'm over on the right side of the table. This bet is on the left side. I'm over on the right side of the table, and it's this player's turn over here. And I hear behind me that this player on this side is asking how much it is, and they say, "It's okay, I'll just figure it out myself," which immediately caused me to turn back and look over. And the way that they tried to figure it out is they stacked their blue 5K chips up really, really tall and pushed it all the way across the table to compare the stack size completely on their own. And I said, "Whoa, hold on, it's not your turn." Now, if you deal poker, you know that once a player takes their chips and pushes them into the pot like that, that's a call. Even though this player is used to sort of the home game vibe where they take chips and they might figure out how much a bet is by pushing them over there. Like in a poker room, you can't do that. So I'm over here. I tell the player, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." This player ends up folding, and now this action stands. And I basically tell the player, "Okay, you just push chips into the pot." He's like, "I was just seeing how much it was." Well, you're in a poker room. I got the supervisor over to the table, and he ended up making the ruling that that was a call, and there's no way out of that. But that's the type of thing that, like, I would never see that in a market that had had casino poker for a really long period of time. That's one interesting thing that happened to me yesterday while I was dealing, where the player was getting upset with me because I said, "Well, you push your chips forward, that's a call." And he's like, "Well, I wasn't calling." And it's just interesting that a player would even have that to say, right? Because we who work in the casino industry know, I mean, you're calling if you do something like that. Let's see. Hey, bro. Hi, bro. Hey, what's going on? Athala. Alexander says, "I'll clap you in blackjack, you fraud. Stop lying." I have no idea what that means, but thank you for adding to my chat. Joey says, "Yup, Mark. Hope you're well. It's been a while since I last watched live, but got a spare half hour, so here I am." Awesome. Well, I'm happy to have you here, man. This is the time to ask anything that you want. Even you, Alexander, you can ask me anything that you want to learn about the casino industry. Uh, I've got this Bellagio thing up behind me, which is just a picture that I have. I'm obviously not out there, but I am in Texas still, and I've been dealing a lot out there, and it's been pretty fun. Um, let's see. So, what are some things that happened at Texas Card House that were interesting? This isn't about dealing. Well, actually, this is about dealing. So, I was tapping into a table yesterday also, and when I tapped into the table, this was a 2-5 no limit game. And this player had gone all in on the turn, and another player called. And the player that went all in flipped their hand up. Now, I'm not the dealer. I'm standing behind this while it's going on. Okay? The player flips up their hand. They have pocket sevens. There's a 7 on the board, and there's 4 diamonds on the board. The other player at the table, it seemed like they weren't as experienced with poker, even though they were playing for probably, I think they had about 400 that they had just called that all in for. So they called for about $400. And basically, the river came out a diamond. There were 5 diamonds on the board for a flush on the board. The player with pocket sevens didn't say anything. Now, as a dealer in this situation, when this other player doesn't realize that there's a flush on the board, you say nothing. And sure enough, the other player looked at the 3 sevens, thought that it beat their hand, and mucked their hand, and not a single player at the table said anything. And they were all good about that, because you're not supposed to say anything as a player in that situation either. And the dealer ended up correctly taking the cards and mucking them. Even though there was a flush on the board, that player had a flush, but the other player mucked their hand and didn't show down. And so then they just pushed the pot to the player who had shown their hand down, and that player won. It was a really interesting thing to watch, because I don't know all the dealers at Texas Card House yet. I tend to have confidence in them because they've proven that they're really good, but I still don't know them all. And so I didn't have any way to know for sure that this dealer would handle it well, and they handled it perfectly by not saying anything. I thought that was interesting. Barlight Broker says, have you ever drove drunk? No, I haven't. I'm a bit of a square, if I'm being honest. It's an interesting question. I appreciate that. Barlight Broker also says, have you ever dealt anything other than cards? I have not dealt anything other than cards. My audience today seems to be a bit off the deep end, which is fine. But I will say this. Very often when I don't even think about it. And like, I've told people, yeah, I teach people to be dealers or something like that. They're like, what? And then I say, no, poker. And people are always surprised at first when I say that, because I've got the beard, the long hair, and the ponytail nowadays. But even years ago when I was a dealer, I'd tell somebody, I'm a dealer. Oh, I'm a dealer, something like that. And they're just like, what? You mean drugs? No, I don't mean drugs. I think my favorite was when a family member was confused for a moment. And I sort of just let it go and just shrugged it off, because they looked at me like, you're asking about craps roulette. Oh, I understand what you mean. That's pretty funny. So back in 2007, when I broke into the casino industry, I did work at a full casino in Washington State, and they did a great job of training people. I was fortunate enough to spend about 2.5 years of my career as a dual rate dealer supervisor, where I would deal poker and supervise poker, but I would also deal table games and roulette and craps, and I would also supervise those games as well. And I have also sat boxing craps, but I was never good enough at craps to be able to handle like an insanely busy game. I was never good enough at craps to be able to handle to be able to box with a lot of action. But I was good enough to be on the table in some situations. And honestly, dealing craps is a fun thing, because you just get to keep learning and improving yourself. And so there was just something about it that was really like, wow, this is going fast. It says which casino in Washington. So it was called the Nooksack River Casino. It's up in the Bellingham area in a town called Deming, Washington. Unfortunately, now that casino doesn't exist anymore. They ended up building another casino down the road from themselves. It might be like 15 minutes away. And what's it called now? Northwood, I think is what it's called. And I believe they now have table games there as well. But yeah, it was the Nooksack tribe is who I worked for. And it was a really cool experience. Their game was it was a $3 minimum craps game, which was pretty wild. You'd get people going for some interesting action with a $3 minimum, and when they start pressing and all that stuff, it gets pretty crazy. Um, and those dealers were really experienced. The ones that were there, a lot of them were tribal, and they were just like a part of it, if that makes any sense. And when they would, like, whoever was on stick, if there was a lot of action, the casino wanted the money, so they would just send the dice, and you'd have to catch up sometimes 1, 2, 3 rolls from before, and the box would sort of be on it and with you, especially if you were a slightly slower dealer. But I heard so many stories about them just absolutely running over whoever was dealing base out there. And I was always like, oh boy, like I wanted to learn to be good at craps, but at the same time, because I was very experienced with poker, even earlier, like I went there, I learned all this stuff, and once I was in poker, it was a wrap. I was very strong in there, and so they always needed me in poker instead of putting me in craps. This was a very small casino, and if you were a dealer, you would deal whatever games. So they would have their strongest dealers at whatever they had go to those games, and so they would send me to poker a lot. Joey says, are you doing any more collaborations with Heather or Jay planned? They are great videos. Well, I really appreciate that. I love doing collabs with them. I don't have anything specifically planned, but I mean, generally speaking, the way that I do things with Heather or Jay is we sort of reach out and we schedule it for like 2 to 4 weeks in advance, and then we say, hey, let's just do it, and we put it on the calendar, and it's sort of a done deal. So nothing's ever planned that far in advance, because I mean, you know, a lot of preparation does go into these videos where we do collabs with them, but at the same time, we're very experienced, so it's not hard to figure out what to do in a short bit of notice. So whenever we get the hankering, we just sort of go for it. Barlight follows up and says, don't you like Shuffle Masters machines? Yes, I do. Right now I'm dealing in Texas Card House, and it is hand shuffle, and I like shuffle machines so much better than that, but at the same time, hand shuffle is not bad. It actually feels sort of more like real poker in a way. But I do like the shuffle machines. Yes, the shuffle machines speed things up as a dealer. It's that simple. I like that. Richard says, hi Mark, the TDA exam certificate, what's your opinion? So I never bothered with it specifically because I used to supervise back before that really mattered. I was a supervisor shift manager for a long time, and if I were to be in those positions now, I would get it personally. But my real reason for getting it is probably more on the nostalgia side and the networking side. I think that TDA, I think the world of TDA, I think they do an absolutely amazing job. I think that the thought and process that they put, the thought that goes into things and the process that they put forward in order to make the world of poker better has been so good for everybody. And because of that, if it says TDA on it, I'm a yes. When it comes to their exam certificate, I don't actually know what goes into getting that. I really don't. But I mean, I'm also very familiar with their content, their rules, their procedures, and I'm always having these conversations about TDA in general. So my honest opinion is, if you have an opportunity to do it, and I don't think it's that expensive if it even costs anything. I think it costs a little bit, maybe. Yeah, I'm not going to say how much. I'm not sure. It's under 100. It might be under 20. But I'm just a yes for everything TDA. They have done nothing but prove themselves to be intelligent. And you might make the argument, well, they did change it from last card off the deck to first card off the deck and screw up the whole industry for a few years. That's true. They made some mistakes along the way, but they also used that to create the idea of recommended procedures, which now whenever they have something that they don't know for sure if it's going to work, but they think it would be better, they roll it out as a recommended procedure, and they give poker rooms the opportunity to test it for a 2-year period, and then in the next TDA summit every 2 years, they talk about it. I do want to go to this year's TDA summit if they have one this year. I really, really like everything that they do, so I'm a big yes for that. And I am a TDA member, which is different than having a certificate. TDA member doesn't take much effort at all in order to get. Richard says it's $10, and I think about to exam. It's $10. Yeah, that's what it is. It's something like that because they do have to have someone actually grade the exam. So, in that sense, that makes sense for them to charge. Like they're basically taking zero money for it, but it's not nothing, right? Just because it does take them time. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of the TDA, and I have been for a while. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to go to this year's TDA. It's the first time that if they have one scheduled. Actually, I want to go to the site and see if they have one scheduled. I'm curious now. PokerTDA.com is their site, and the Poker TDA Summit. Let's see what it says. For those that don't know, the TDA is an unpaid organization. It's a volunteer organization, and it was founded in 2001 by a handful of the top people in the industry. And that's part of why this thing came out so good, because this is a pure passion project that's just been getting better and better. I don't, as I'm looking right here, I don't see anything about any upcoming ones. Perhaps we'll find out soon, but yeah, I'm a big yes for everything TDA. All right, let's see what else has happened as I was dealing that was interesting. Let me think through my many dealing memories here recently. Texas Card House did get a 10, 25, 50 no limit game. That was pretty wild. Having big games is a fun thing for dealers most of the time. It sort of mixes it up and changes the pace. Although I will say, dealing in Texas Card House, it's always a nice change of pace, because you deal probably 4 to 5 mixed games per day there, and usually they're pot limit Omaha or Big O high low, Big O 8, which is still pot limit, and they call it Congress there. There's like a little section of the country that calls it Congress. And then some other things. There's a dealer's choice game where there's all kinds of stuff. I actually learned how to deal a couple of games at the table. I'm an experienced dealer, but I'd never seen Regret before, and they wanted to play it with a double board. So I'm like, okay, I'll be able to figure this out, no problem. But what is it that we're playing? What is Regret, guys? And so I sort of sat down, or I'm dealing the hand, and the players they're nice enough about it. They just tell you Regret is a game where you give everybody, I think it's 4 cards. Yeah, it's 4 cards, and after the flop and after the turn, you have to toss 1 card each. Except you toss it face up. You just leave it face up on the table, and it plays sort of like Hold'em. That was interesting. It's not very often that I'm going to sit in a table and learn a new game as I'm dealing it, but that was something pretty cool to experience there. I also, for the first time dealing, I experienced double board games that were a part of the dealer's choice variety, and those double board games you could play with an ultimate high and an ultimate low. So basically, Texas Card House decided, and I totally understand where they're coming from. If somebody wants to play, say they're 8-handed and they're playing 4-card PLO 8, right? High low PLO. And they're playing with 2 boards. Well, they don't want half the pot to go to the top board, where a quarter of it goes to the high and a quarter of it goes to low, and then half the pot goes to the low board, where a quarter of it goes to the high and a quarter of it goes to the low, right? So they don't want to do that, because then what if they chop a low? Then you're breaking these pots down to an eighth. Sometimes if 3 people have the same low, you'd be breaking it down even less than that, and it just gets sort of crazy. So they do this thing where there's 1 high between the 2 boards that wins half the pot. They call it the ultimate high, and there's 1 low between the 2 boards that gets half the pot. So it's ultimate high, ultimate low. And the action in some of these hands are just absolutely ridiculous. It's pretty interesting to experience all that. So, for example, I had one player that got confused for about $350. They go all in on the turn. They have an ace deuce in their hand, and there's a 3-4-8 on one board, and so they're thinking they have the nut low for the entire hand for the top and the bottom, because the ace deuce is the lowest you can go. But on the other board, there was I think a 6-5 3 deuce, and 6-5 ace deuce, and someone else had a low on that board, but that board offered a 6 low. So even though they weren't using the ace deuce, it was still a 6 low, whereas the other board was an 8 low, and they didn't understand that until they ended up not getting the pot, and it was a little awkward. But it was cool. some interesting stuff like that. I also have been doing some training in the room and some one-on-one training sessions with people. So if you are in Texas and you want to do a live feedback session, I have been doing that in the room. I actually tape it when you're in there with me, and I just bring all my gear, I tape it, and I give you a copy of the video later, and then I give you the instructions, everything that I correct about your dealing. Go work on this stuff until it's habit later on. One of the biggest issues that I have with training in general is it's not recorded. So people are being given all this instruction, but it's so much stuff. Like if I spend an hour with somebody, chances are I'm going to correct about 20 things minimum. And for that person to remember all of those to be able to work on them later is almost impossible. So the feedback sessions that I've been doing, I record them. I give very clear instructions for what to change and create new habits for. And if you want to do a session with me, you're welcome to book it with me. You can find me in Texas Card House in Dallas, or you can email it. Now, traditionally, I've been doing these sessions at home, so I can also do it if you're anywhere. If you have a table, we can do it by video. That's how I normally do it. But now, for the first time, I'm also doing some of them live because people are asking me to, and I'm like, sure. Daniel says, Mark. Hi, Daniel. I love the enthusiasm. I don't know that he's watching, but I also want to give Ben a shout out. He was my very first paid member, both on Facebook over a year ago, and also, or about a year ago, and also on YouTube. And he just joined the Texas Card House in Dallas team, and it's really cool that I got to meet him in person. Shout out to see him here. Daniel says, good to see you again, sir. I appreciate that. Good to be back. Good to be here today. These live streams are always interesting. I go live at like it's 1 o'clock Central. I try to keep the same time. So 2 p.m. Eastern, I go live pretty consistently around then. And it's not until about an hour and 30 minutes later that I pick up a lot of momentum and people jump on and really start talking and listening. The beginning is always a little bit slower, which I think is sort of funny, but I think it has to do with the YouTube algorithm, honestly. For those that wanted to watch it, the Texas Card House Dallas live stream just came out yesterday with the final table of the 1.2 something million dollar prize pool tournament that we just had, and it was pretty interesting. Like for me, I had dealt to every player in there at different tables over the course of all the days, and to see them come in and sit down and play for that much money was pretty cool. Definitely nice being in the action. It had been 5 years since I dealt, and coming back to deal again after not doing it for 5 years is something that feels really good, especially, being someone that's a dealer trainer. Like jumping back in and remembering these details is very valuable for me, especially in teaching, and understanding like the nuances and different things that you see in different rooms is nice. One thing that's interesting about Texas Card House as a dealer is you don't take a rake. So I had to untrain myself to take a rake. My brain the first day wanted to take money out of the pot and put it aside where it's supposed to go, and I had to teach myself not to do that, which was pretty weird. But they pay time there. It's a part of the law in Texas, and that's part of how that comes up. But reminder, ask your questions. Now's the time. I create this time for you guys basically, and the more questions you ask, the easier it is for me to talk in general. Let me see. What are some things that I've been asked lately? I'm not good at being on the spot and thinking of this stuff, if I'm being honest. I try, but what else has happened to me as a dealer over the last couple of weeks? I did sort of have to adjust to the room as a dealer. Each room has its nuances. Where this particular room keeps the Poker Atlas screen, it's off to the left, and so I had to adjust where I keep my arm, which then means that I had to adjust where I keep my muck. I had to bring it in slightly in order to still be able to protect it slightly toward the center, which then adjusted where I bring cards to the muck, and little things like that are interesting. Also, the way that the tables are here. By the way, this room spent the money on these chairs. These chairs are amazing, and I recently did something that I did as an experiment, but if you're a poker dealer, you should listen to this. This is pretty cool. I bought a cheap like $8.88 yoga mat at Walmart just to try this out, and I love it. I cut it out in a like a almost a circle, not quite a circle, shaped sort of like that, and I use it to sit on when I deal at these tables. Now these chairs are great already, but the yoga mat breathes a little bit, and like cutting out a yoga mat to sit on instead of a placemat or instead of a cushion, if you already have good chairs in a poker room, that's a huge yes, okay? And I will tell you this, I did not realize how much I liked it taking a yoga mat cutout and sitting on it until I tried it for a few tables, and then I said, it seems okay. But then once I didn't have it anymore, I was like, oh, I'm never gonna deal without this yoga mat again. It really made that huge difference. I don't know what prompted me to try that in the first place, but I said, what the heck? Like, some people get placemats, some people get these cushions. None of that stuff is bad, but this yoga mat, the thin little yoga mat, it's grippy on both you and on the underside on the chair, and it breathes nicely, and I absolutely love dealing and sitting on a yoga mat. I would recommend that to anybody. Again, you cut it out in the correct shape in order to be able to do that well. So that's something that I definitely experienced and I liked. I tried a few other things as well to try to make dealing a little bit more comfortable, but at the end of the day, dealing in this room is pretty nice in general. What else has come up? I do want to give a shout out to the people in Dallas. I have never dealt to such nice people, ever. I've never seen anything like it, honestly. Like, nobody's complaining. Nobody's getting mad at the dealer. I can't think of any negative experience I had with a player, literally off the top of my head. Now, I am a little bit desensitized to it in general, right? So there's probably some stuff that has happened that I'm not thinking of because I'm just used to it. But in general, the players in Dallas are so much nicer than anywhere I have ever been. And I have to give a shout out to all the players in Dallas that I have had the pleasure to deal to. It's truly remarkable how you guys are just awesome. Yeah, it's sort of mind blowing because in other places, I've dealt in Washington State. I've been to plenty of places to play poker. I've been to Vegas. I never dealt there. I've been to California. I dealt a lot in Florida. I supervised in Florida. Like, there's always people that are incredibly unpleasant at times, and there's just none of that in Dallas in my experience. And a huge thank you to everybody in Dallas for being awesome is really what I want to say to all the poker players out there. Gustavo says, "Hey Mark, hey, what's going on? It's good to see you in the chat." Joey says, "Odd question. Do you have a preference to the color of the table layout? Is one color easier on the eyes than others?" That is a good question. And if you are trying to open a room or if you are trying to get your home game table, I am personally a big fan of the traditional dark green felt. I do understand that for branding, not everybody wants to use that. I can tell you at Texas Card House, the black felt makes it hard to see the black chips sometimes. Now you can say, well, what about green chips on a green felt? Yes, that can be challenging. That's why I say the dark green felt is what I'm a fan of. I think that dark green, the traditional dark green is the best color. It's also not too hard on the eyes. I've seen bright red felts. I've seen bright blue felts. I mean, it's okay. But that dark green felt really does a great job of being a background color in my experience. And I think that's the best choice across the board. I think black's okay, but like I said, the $100 chips do get a bit lost in the felt. But I've also never really seen that lead to any type of an issue or a floor call. So, it's not horrible. It also has to do with the chips themselves, though, because choosing your chip design is something that can influence that decision for what color your felt is as well. Joey says, "Thanks, you're welcome. What do you think is a rule enforcing method?" So Gustavo says, "What do you think is a rule enforcing method for killing a hand for acting out of turn when a player does it too often?" I would personally never. Well, hold on. I would never kill a hand. If it's in a tournament, I would give them a penalty if they do it too often. And the first time that So whatever your sort of standard is for the room, if acting out of turn twice is something that a player does and that deserves a penalty, then they get 1 round for that in a tournament, and the second time they might get 2 rounds. And you also have to sort of make a judgment call to determine how much of an impact it had in the tournament. So if they acted out a turn by skipping one player in the first level and raising with 100 blinds, they raised to 300. I mean, I'm not gonna give that as much of an issue as them being heads up and going all in as an angle, right? Or a potential angle, I guess we can't say for sure. So you have to, as a tournament director, you really do have to evaluate what's reasonable to give a penalty for. Now, if it's a cash game, the general rule of thumb is you want to be sort of lenient with that stuff because there is already a penalty for acting out of turn. The player who did not act now has the ability to sort of, if they know the rules, they can control to a very large degree what you're able to do here. So if you go all in out of turn, that player, if they want your money, they can check and your all in is stuck in the pot. Or if they want you to try to back out, they can go all in themselves and you still might fold because now you get to make a new action. But at the same time, it is absolutely an angle. And in a cash game, the only thing that I recommend doing, I would never kill a hand for something like that. Ever, 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 ever. The entire industry got completely away from killing hands. And I think that that's a great thing that they got away from killing hands because at the end of the day, the winning hand should win. But you can kick people out. So you can give somebody a warning and say, look, you've done this too many times. If you continue to do this, you're not going to be able to play here anymore. And so then if you're in a poker room and a player acts out of turn, and I mean, even if they come back the next day and they do it again, you should have a log with the supervisors if you're running a room efficiently, and they should know that player got kicked out for acting out of turn. If they come back and they act out of turn once the next day in any significant way, again, if they fold and they're one player early, people do that all the time when they're trying to run to the bathroom and not miss a hand or something. So like that's a little bit different. But if it's an action of significance, and for the record, acting out of turn and folding out of turn after the turn is a lot different than doing it pre-flop when nobody's entered the pot yet. Just to mention that. And for all you poker players out there, please don't run to the bathroom and fold your hand. Wait until it's your turn and do that. I'm just saying it happens is my point. But I would say, and I've kicked players out for, I don't know if I've kicked someone out specifically for acting out of turn too often, but I will say that acting out of turn is one of those things that falls into the category of warn a player, kick them out in a cash game. If they need to be kicked out, kick them out. Don't kill their hand. Killing a player's hand is the worst thing that you can do in a poker room. Absolutely the worst. Unless there was collusion or something like that, and then you have no choice. But that's something that we always avoid. Beansand says, bright red felt equals felter skelter, which I don't know what felter skelter means. Let's see. If I don't know if I'll find anything when I look this up. Felter skelter. It's a thing. I have no idea what I'm looking at. That's funny though. I assume that it's either a joke that I don't get or a thing, but I like it. Okay, I get her. But Gustavo says, okay, I get it. Better not killing, thanks. Yes, absolutely. Don't kill hands if you can avoid it. That is a very good way to really upset players. And Helter Skelter reference. I appreciate that. And I had heard of Helter Skelter, and now I have to. Oh, a song by the Beatles. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm not great with those types of references. I do my best though. But there's definitely somebody out there that read that and got it. If you could just give a thumbs up if you got the reference, then I would feel better that I don't get it. Joni says, hey there, I'm not really sure if I'm able to explain situation correctly, but let's say blind versus blind, 100, 200 in a tournament, I'm guessing. Small blind wants to call but only has 1K chip. Okay, and you're going to give the rest of this in a moment. Oh, the pressure's on to spit it out fast. I do think I know where you're going with this. Generally speaking, in a tournament, if a player wants to go all in and they only have one oversized chip and that's all their chips, they still need to verbalize their action. Otherwise, it's just a call. If that's what you're going to ask, then that will be the answer. player would need to say the word all in or the words all in. Joni says, "Give me sex, can't fit." That's pretty funny. And then he corrected it to sec instead of sex. Nice little Freudian slip there, right? But yeah, I understand. Sometimes typing in the chat is difficult here because you have a character limit and they don't it doesn't tell you until you've tried to hit enter and you're like, I don't know what to do. Yeah, I've dealt with that before. No problem at all. Me the Watch says, "Hi Mark, burn turning in for a little over a year. You're doing a great, been tuning in for a little over a year. You're doing a great job. Thanks for the resource, homie. Appreciate that very much." Johnny says, yeah, yeah, kind of, but what if he takes the 100 chip back and then place the 1K chip in? Well, that's an interesting question. I know that the TDA has recently said if a player takes chips in and then tosses another chip out, then that's considered a raise a lot of the time. But I think an argument here in this particular case is this is going to be very house specific. So I actually don't know what the TDA rule is for this one situation. Because realistically, if they were to put their 1K chip in, that's a call. Because they don't have any way to make change. And if they were to take their 100 chip back and put their 1K chip in, well, the dealer would have just tossed them back their 100 chip anyway and given them change. So I'm going to say if you pull back if you've only got one additional chip and you pull back your 100 chip and put your 1,000 chip in, that's probably still going to be a call for an oversized chip. This situation is so unbelievably specific, though. I mean, realistically, let's say it this way. What are you doing if you're trying to make it 1,000 and leaving 100 behind? Why would you do that, right? There is a rule that says if you pull chips back and then put something else out that you're locked into some kind of a raise. But I feel like this is a floor call and you're going to sort of get what you get in most poker rooms out there. And I feel fine with that. Like, if I'm the one coming to the table, I'm going to know the rules of my room. And these questions are difficult to answer for like a universal audience of multiple poker rooms with multiple ways of interpreting it. But let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of rule number 1 in the TDA? It basically states that sometimes the technical rules of the game are not as important as what's fairness and right, and I'm paraphrasing this, so don't quote me, but the tournament director does have the ability to make a ruling based on fairness and what's correct as opposed to the technical rules of the game. So I think in this case, the ruling is going to be dependent upon how it happened. I think it makes more sense to do that as a TD than to come and make a technical ruling in this case. You know, I think that's just reasonable. And I think probably in this case, the player was most likely trying to call. It's really hard to angle in this case too. I suppose maybe you could do it, but you're going to have a dealer at the table who described what happened and all these things. You know, if I come to the table, I'm basically going to solve this logic problem, which is what handling a floor call is. Every single floor call is a logic problem. And the supervisor needs to go to the floor call thinking about it as a logic problem that they're trying to solve. And they use the rules of poker in order to solve it properly. Leaning toward following the rules, but understanding circumstance where sometimes the rules don't perfectly cover it. I would be curious to hear. I would assume that the TD has a specific answer to this rule that they're 100% consistent with. And if that's the case, then that 100% consistency is going to rule here as well. But I mean, I'm sort of fine with either ruling, honestly, in this case, because it's like if they were the thing as a player in this case, by doing weird things can happen, right? If you have exactly 2 chips, let's use a little logic as the player in this case. All right, you put the 1,000 chip out there, and if you want to fold, you toss your cards in, you take the 1,000 chip back, and you toss your 100 if you want, or you just let them make you change so that you have change, or you have somebody change it for you before it gets to your action. there's so many different things that can happen. Zachary says, are there any weekend dealer training kind of things that could help a player learn to deal at TCH Dallas? As of right now, TCH doesn't do any of their own training, to my knowledge. They have asked me to potentially do a training course. I'm talking with them about potentially doing training, something like 9 a.m. until noon every day on weekdays, and having there be some kind of a deal where people could learn to deal at Texas Card House. But I haven't finalized anything with them yet, and they don't really do anything right now. You are able to do one-on-one sessions with me. If you're starting from scratch, though, especially if you're a poker player, if you're starting from scratch, I would say if you literally just buy my course, it's $50 a month in order to deal Texas Hold'em. Once you get through a lot of that stuff, you could book a session with me, and 1 or 2 sessions, and you should be caught up to speed if you've taken it seriously and learned everything in the course. So it's not that expensive of a route nowadays if you're willing to put the time in. But if you're the type of person that doesn't do well learning on your own by watching videos, then you might want an in-person class. There's still a huge place in the entire casino industry for in-person classes. I'm not trying to say that those aren't valuable. If you're interested in participating in a class at Texas Card House with me teaching it, it's something I've been discussing with Victor a lot. So send me an email. Say that you're interested. I would definitely say thumbs up to that. Big Swag Shack just joined as a bonus mix game lesson course member. Appreciate that very, very much. In that course that was just joined, you're going to get access to everything for Texas Hold'em, everything for learning how to deal poker, and also all of the mixed games as well, so that you could literally learn to deal everything that they require you to know for the series, which I think the series this year is going to be in September from what I heard. Instead of the summer series, it's going to be a September series. And if they do the TDA Summit, I definitely want to be out in Vegas for that. So that could be really cool. Really, really appreciate that membership join, though. Always awesome to see new people join the channel. And as always, Marc at Truepokerdealer.com. I do spell it with a C. Here, I'll put it right here. Marc at Truepokerdealer.com. If you have any questions for me, especially if you're a member, I will go to great lengths to help you with whatever you need. If you're having questions about what you're learning there. Ton of appreciation for that. Gustavo, is Jazz already dealing at TCH? Love that question. Yes, she is. And she is also blown away by how nice the people are there. My TV was apparently on and my Netflix just sort of connected. If you could hear the Netflix sound, that's what that was. So Jazz has been there. She started on Thursday. She came just in time to start dealing the big tournament event that we had. And she just dealt mostly tournament there for the first handful of days, which was pretty interesting. And I think she started dealing the high-low 4 and 5 card games starting yesterday. Was her first day really getting into that. And, that practice session that we did in the live stream last week helped. I mean, she had a great time on those games. She said it wasn't that hard compared to how she was sort of concerned about it. Like, she knows how to deal those games, but it's been a while since she's done it. And you need a ton of effort to learn that stuff. And if you're out of practice, it can be sort of hard. But she said she handled it with no real issue. And it was cool. John says, where do you deal? So I haven't dealt in a long time. It's been 5 years, and I just started dealing again at Texas Card House in Dallas, Texas. I am friendly with the general manager, Victor, there. He is a phenomenal general manager. I have a lot of positive things to say about him. I've known him for a long time, and he's somebody that you want to work for, is the simplest way to say it. Definitely cares about the employees, and I like to think I have some influence on that because I did help him learn to be a supervisor and stuff like that years ago. But since then, he's run multiple rooms across the country, and he's definitely grown on his own to a very, very healthy place. Really cool coming back and having things sort of go full circle where I hired him for his first dealing job years ago, and working for him is a great feeling, honestly. Um, let's see. Me the Watch says, "Have you played faded spade cards?" I haven't. If so, do you like them or find them a bit unwieldy as others do? I like the look, but they seem a bit thick. Dealing for an extended time may be tricky. Nope, never. I've sort of, the name sounds familiar, but it stops there with me. I don't really know much about them. Feel free to sort of explain more what they are. I'd be curious to hear that. Um, Gustavo says, "Cool. Wish her all the best." She'll appreciate that. Something that's been really nice, people that have come on my live stream have been recognized in different places. I interviewed Naz, who is now dealing at the Hard Rock, and I have talked to her since then. Not Jazz. This is Naz. She was on. I did an interview with her right after she passed her audition to deal at the Hard Rock in South Florida. And right before she worked her first shift, she came and she was we did a feedback session where she was learning a bit and asking me questions and stuff before her first dealing shift. And, since then I've heard she's been dealing PLO, and she's definitely like gotten it. And it's been really cool hearing her sort of progress. And the thing that's really funny is just interviewing on this channel and doing a live stream. People watch the whole thing, and they talk to her about it while she's on the table, and it like blew her mind. I thought that was really cool to hear that story. Jazz has experienced the same thing, and you guys are awesome for caring and following up. I appreciate that, and I'm sure she does too. John says, "How are the tips there? I deal at the Venetian." So they don't actually allow the dealers to speak specifically about the tips, but I will say that they're good, and it's fair to say that, right? I don't know what the tips are like at the Venetian, but and I also don't know how long it's going to last where they're good in Texas, right? New markets tend to be different, and they evolve over time and all that stuff. But working in Texas has been great. I have definitely enjoyed it, and the money is satisfying is what I'll say. Let me see. SI says, "Have you dealt any live streams at the TCH yet?" I have. I appreciate that question. I dealt for the second half. I did about a little over 2 hours on one of the first TCH Dallas 2-5 no limit games. Let me find that link actually and put that here. Actually, you know what? It'd be too hard for me to find right now, and I would be distracted. But I did deal the second half for about 2 hours, and honestly, I really liked it. They asked me to deal another one, but I wasn't able to because it was a Tuesday when I had other commitments. But I'll be back dealing those live streams again. I really enjoyed it. It's an RFID. It's a different thing dealing a live stream. You have to announce every single action, be super clear, figure out every single bet amount, because you're communicating to somebody in a booth that is transferring what's happening on the table into the proper presentation for them to do it correctly. And I like stuff like that. It was a really good experience the one time I did it, and yeah, I'll absolutely be back doing that again as soon as I can. And then the follow-up question is, why do the dealers wear a headset? Well, the reason the dealers wear a headset is because they have to be communicating all the action to the people in the back, so that they can, like when you see it on the Texas Card House live stream, it shows up as, this player has this hand. Now that comes from the RFID, but following all their action is very hard to do if they're trying to run the whole thing. So the dealer communicates the action. Sometimes they're not sure exactly what happened, and the headset is communication back and forth with them. So sometimes they'll ask the dealer questions. Sometimes they'll tell the dealer, stop dealing for a second, have the player in seat 4 rescan their whole cards. It didn't pick it up with the RFID. Sometimes there was one time where a player was bending the cards. Now these RFID cards are expensive. They're different. So a player was sort of bending them a bit more, and I was dealing, and I had to tell the player to stop doing that. The stuff like that, that's a part of it. It's a cool production though. John says, the Venetian hasn't been all that great. Lots of stiffs and pros that tip only $1 no matter what. Yeah, it's better than that in Texas. I can't guarantee anything long term, but it's good for now. Joey says, sorry, gotta go. Time and tide and all that. Take care. Stay safe and keep smiling. Appreciate that. Appreciate your questions, comments, and just joining us for the time that you did. Have a good rest of your day, Joey. SI says, oh, that is why they wear the headset then to communicate the action. Yeah, and the headset itself, it's got a mic and an earpiece piece on this side, but on this side, if you notice, it just wraps around. There's nothing over this ear. As the dealer in that table, I have noticed that the players will talk to me on the side where it has the earpiece, and I cannot hear them at all while it's over there, which is interesting. Also, when you're dealing that game as a dealer, you wear a fanny pack because there's nowhere to put a tip box, and the fanny pack is where you put your tips, which is interesting. Got you, thanks. Yep, you're welcome. Thank you for asking those questions. I really do like the live stream. Like, I personally, just because I was a part of this tournament and I find poker interesting, I personally watched the final table. It was a 2-hour live stream of the final table where first place was 270 something or 260 something thousand. It was really interesting to watch. I would have loved to deal it, but it was late at night and I'm sleeping by then. Bryce says, is there anywhere we can watch that live stream? Yeah, here, let me find that one. Oh, you're talking about the one that I dealt? Yeah, let me find it. I'm just going to go find it. Why not? You guys are asking for it. Let's see. I'm searching for Texas Card House Dallas. My goal here is going to be to find the specific one that I was in. Oh, you know what? I think I sent the link to somebody. Let me find that instead. I should be able to find it here. I want to find this because I really enjoyed dealing it. It was definitely interesting. And there were some nerves for a little bit because, you know, you train yourself as a dealer not to announce folds, you know. And for me, I'm communicating like small blind folds, big blind folds, stuff like that. You don't say that when you're dealing regularly, but this is a production. It's a different thing. So let me see here. I sent it to somebody. I just want to find that. Let's see if this is it. I think this is it. So now I can send this to myself. Here we go. All right, I sent that. And I have it here. And let me just make sure that this is it. Yeah, this is it. All right. I will put this link right in here. Why not? And so that's a YouTube link. You guys, let me know if that shows up in the chat. I think it's there. Let's see. So I have just provided the link of myself dealing the Texas Card House. It was the second half. I think the link starts you like 2 hours and something in. That might not actually be the beginning of when I was dealing. It was just some of the time when I was dealing. But you can rewind it a little bit if you want to see before that, or you can just start it there. There was one player at the table. He goes by Donkey. He was actually the announcer for the final table the other day. They let him do the announcing. He was really interesting to deal to in that live stream. Really, really interesting. In that 2-5 game, he was playing hands that people don't usually play, but his post-flop play was excellent. That was really interesting. Let's see. Brett says, love your channel. Are you still a consultant for card rooms and dealers? Yes. How can I reach out to you? You can send me an email at marc@truepokerdealer.com, and I spell it with a C, marc@truepokerdealer.com. I just included my email right in the chat. Yeah, you can reach out to me. I do consulting, and I mean, if you're looking for consulting for anything related to poker, running a poker room, all that stuff, I'm probably the right guy for you. And I also have connections for the things that I'm not quite as experienced in, but most things I'm very experienced in. For example, I don't know how to set up a cashier if you're trying to build a room from scratch, right? But I do know people that know how to do that. Bradley Beal says, dealer salary. I'm assuming this isn't the real Bradley Beal, but just in case it is. So the dealers make almost all of their money in tips. Any state that allows it, the dealers are going to get paid less than minimum wage as a base pay. And then on top, just like waitresses do or waiters do in a lot of places, but they make up for it in tips. I regularly advertise that poker dealers make between $25 and $40 an hour, and that is pretty darn true. So that's pretty much what you're looking at if you're a poker dealer. And there's some circumstances where it can be significantly more than that. Cheryl says, I had three players. So it's a situation, it sounds like. I had three players. One was all in on the turn. She exposed her cards before the river, had the nuts. The other two players got mad at me because this happened. I can't make them unsee the cards. What should I do? So, in that particular case, once a player gets mad, you call the floor. Also, if it's a tournament, that's probably going to end up in a penalty for exposing cards before the action's complete, and you also call the floor. If it's a regular 1-2 no limit cash game and nobody has a problem with it, I wouldn't worry about it. The player might have done it by accident, getting excited. It happens sometimes, but you do want to tell them, hey, you weren't supposed to do that. You have to announce what the cards are and flip them back over. But if, as a general rule of thumb, you abandon all rules and stuff that you do as soon as players get upset, and you just call the floor over. That's the general rule of thumb. That's what you should do, and then you don't have to handle anything. SI says, is this the first room you've seen that does streams? I haven't come across any others. I am familiar with Live at the Bike, which has been going on for years. I am familiar with some of the streams that the WSOP has done over time. But Texas Card House did a good thing when they decided to brand themselves, starting in Austin when they started doing their live streams, which were well run, and then now in Dallas as well. They have both locations doing streams, and it's been a good thing. And nowadays I think there are some others that are popping up as well. Let's see. Big Swag says, at Cheryl, they shouldn't get mad at you. Yeah, I agree with that. Like you, so the thing that there is one thing about this, Cheryl, that I do want to be clear about. Okay, that a good dealer in that situation, and I'm not saying that you're not a good dealer, and I'm not saying you didn't do this, okay? So you might very well have done this, because I've done this and players flip their cards over anyway. I can't tell you how many times this has happened in poker that I've seen, okay? That being said, the player's not supposed to. But as a dealer, when you have someone all in and heads up action on the side, when you're bringing the bets in, the first thing that you want to do is communicate. This is a main pot. You're all in for this main pot. These two players are still in on the side with future action, or something like that, right? Like you might say, we still have action on the side, something like that, to communicate to the table not to do the thing that happened, right? So if you never say anything like that, well, you do want to start saying something like that, and a sophisticated player might be upset if a dealer doesn't say something like that. That being said, it's on the player not to do that, for what it's worth. But the dealer has the ability to make it, like I always teach preventative dealing in that case. Let's see, where are we at? Raven says, hey TPD, long time no see. You got the cat in the box, man. That emoji is just your go-to. I like it. It's good to see you, Raven. It has been a while. Hope you're doing well. SI says, link works. Yeah, perfect. Alfie says, sup Mark, long time no see. Sorry I've been MIA. Hey, that's okay. It's good to see you here. I hope you're enjoying Texas, and it was really cool seeing you that time that you came out. And yeah, if you want, I'll deal to you sometime, man, if you come and play a little bit. I've been in that room a lot lately, although I am going to be MIA for about a week coming up. But I will be dealing tonight at Texas Card House at 6:30 shift p.m. Central Time, and then I will be dealing tomorrow during the day, and then I'll be gone for about a week, where I'm working on other stuff. And then I'll be back. Let's see. Raven says, why is the number 1326 important to Texas Hold'em players? I don't know. Why, Raven? You always have these good ones. 1326. That's probably the number of hand combinations. I think we talked about this once. Let's see. But I'm not 100% sure that that's the right answer. I think that that's right. David says, howdy. Hey, what's going on? And Brett says, thanks. I'll email you. Oh, awesome. Yep, absolutely. Alfie says, LOL true. Seriously, why are you complaining for free info? Call or fold. She's all in regardless. Well, when a player shows the nuts, it could kill side action or something like that. But I do understand what you're saying. The free info is valuable to both people. But depending on what the player was trying to do, I don't know. Right? I mean, maybe it's going to kill any side action because they know they're not winning the main pot, so they're less likely to call. Because if someone thinks that they might win the main pot, they might be more willing to put money in with an inferior hand or a draw or something. Oh, I can't tonight. I got practice, but maybe tomorrow. Sure, tomorrow. I'll be around. Raven says, yeah, number of possible starting hands. Hey, I was right. David says, how do blinds work in 7-card stud? How do blinds work in 7-card stud? So there are 2 versions of this. Not everybody knows this. Most 7-card stud games do not have blinds, but you can have, if you were to deal a limit 7-card stud game, it is possible to do it with blinds. You could have 2-4 7-card stud, where the blinds were 1 and 2 or something like that. Or you could have 4-8 7-card stud where the blinds are 2 and 4, and then it's sort of like a limit game in general. I'm more of a fan of having there be no blinds in 7-card stud. Instead of blinds, the up card for each player determines who goes first and where the action starts and who has to bring in. There's a bring in amount generally in stud, and there's a man, it's been a long time since I dealt limit stud with blinds. I don't even remember if the action starts after the blinds now that I'm thinking about it. It probably does, right? Because that would just make sense. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up, but it's such an obscure thing. Nobody plays it like that anymore. I would say there's no blinds in stud in modern poker. It's just it is possible to do. But yeah, so let's assume that there's no blinds. Well, the lowest card by suit in 7-card stud high, which is typically called 7-card stud, the lowest card by suit is going to determine where the action starts. So the deuce of clubs, if it's on the table, is going to be forced to either bring it in or to complete. The bring in is usually considerably less than the minimum. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think like, no, there's no blinds in stud. Am I wrong about this? I feel like I've seen a version of it that's 2-4 limit stud with blinds, but now I'm thinking I might be crazy and there's not any version of that at all. And it might just have been people messing around when I saw that. Let's see. David says, for tournaments, does the bring-in go up every level? I haven't looked at a 7-card stud tournament structure sheet in a long time. I don't think it goes up every single level. My memory from years ago when I last looked at this was it goes up almost every level. I'd have to look at a good structure sheet to know this for sure, but I do think it's possible that the bring-in could be the same for 2 levels at times, just because of the way that it works out. I'm trying to think of an example. Like, I'm thinking the bring-in might be 100 on the 3-6 level, and it might also be 100 on the 4-8 level, for example. But I don't remember a specific 7-card stud structure. But I mean, honestly, if you do a little bit of research and digging, maybe look for WSOP or look for WSOP is probably the place to find it nowadays. You could probably find a 7-card stud blind structure that's solid and just literally copy it. That's what I would do nowadays. I would find one that's respectable. I would understand what they were going for, how long they wanted the tournament to last for, etc. And I would just take that and use it, because why not? The question is this the right place to ask about a hand? I'm a dealer in China. Yes, go right ahead. SI says, not a poker question, but have you dealt craps? As a player's perspective, it can seem overwhelming for a dealer with all the action going on each roll. I actually talked about this a little bit earlier. When I broke into the industry in 2007, I did spend about a little over 2 years dealing all games, including poker, and craps was one of them. And yes, the action does get overwhelming. I never got amazing at craps. I got good at it, but never amazing. But for me, the best I got as a craps dealer was I could handle probably 3 players with decent action on base. You can fit about 7 or 8 or more sometimes per side of the table. I was never at the point where I was able to handle all that. Like the dexterity and memorization needed in order to be able to do that is just off the charts. But also on stick, I could probably handle like maybe 3 players on each side or something like that, without too heavy action. But I actually liked stick. The motions of getting the dice and moving them around and all that stuff was always sort of fun. There is one thing about dealing craps that was always stressing in the beginning though, and most dealers experience this. Craps players are very, very touchy, and when you're on stick, if someone rolls like a 5 or a 6 or an 8 or a 9 or something like that, right? When you get those dice with the stick, it's very easy to flip one of the individual die over and accidentally make 7 face up, and the players freak out when you do that. So like it's really, really enjoyable using the stick and moving the dice around and all this stuff and just feeling like you've got this down. But in the beginning it can be stressful, because if you accidentally send somebody a 7 in the middle of a roll, oh boy are they going to hate you, and it's going to be like on you. Let's see. But dealing craps, like learning to deal craps, is very fun. Nick says, howdy, what's happening, man? From Germany. Hope you're doing well out there, man. SI says, especially if they're a new dealer. Yes. Let's see. Big Swag says, craps is a whole other beast. Yeah, it really is. Craps is the hardest game to deal. There's no question about it. Poker is challenging, and a lot of the situations that come up are obscure, and you sort of have to get it. And it's definitely more challenging than most table games, but craps is very, very, very hard to deal. And when you get good at it, it's really enjoyable, honestly. There's a lot of pride that comes with getting your hands and brain to do the things you need to be able to do at a craps table well. DJ Redlight says, hey Mark, thanks for the stream. Wondering how the TCH was able to offer legal poker in Texas. Is it because of the membership daily and hourly fees with no rake? And is there a bar, or can I bring a 6-pack or bottle of wine? Alfie says BYOB, and that is absolutely correct. It is a BYOB property. So I don't really know a whole lot about the regulations. I haven't gone and read all that stuff myself personally. Basically, there's an entire loophole system, and I think that what TCH was able to do to offer legal poker was they put the money in to figure out where the government would allow it, and where and exactly how to run it so that it was in compliance. And I don't know a lot of the details behind that, but I think that they've done a really good job of researching and working with the powers that be. But I really know very little of those details, other than to say that I know, like, we have to have a membership at TCH that the player has to get. That's part of what's involved in this. And they're not allowed to take money off of their stack in order to, like, purchase food. No, they can, to purchase food or anything like that. Like, the money has to stay in their stack. They can't purchase time. They have to pay hourly as a part of the membership, as opposed to taking a rake. Like, they're not allowed to take a rake, stuff like that. But in order to know those details, unfortunately, I'm not privy to that. And I'm also sort of trying to avoid those conversations with them. It doesn't feel right for me to start prying into that stuff. Because I know I'm going to get asked this stuff. Kevin says, you think you will host a class at TCH in person? I appreciate that question. Earlier, somebody asked about that as well. I have been talking to Victor, the GM, about that, and I'm going to put my email here. If you're interested in a poker dealer course that's live at Texas Card House, send me an email. If I get enough people that are interested, I may decide to offer one. I'm already thinking about offering one. I have the ability to offer a course in a different and probably more powerful way than you'll see in general in the industry. And Texas Card House is hiring dealers. Like, they cannot hire dealers fast enough. It's an ongoing thing at Texas Card House. They just need more and more and more staff. So uh, there's a need for it too. So there's also jobs that come with going through this course and them liking you. Um, Alfie says, I'm down. I'm so rusty. Yeah, send me an email. My email is right here, marc@truepokerdealer.com. If you're interested in the course, if you're interested in a live course at Texas Card House, I'm considering something like 9 a.m. to noon, 5 days a week, for however many weeks it takes. Maybe making it an ongoing thing. Maybe streaming it on their live stream during the day, at Texas Card House live stream, or on True Poker Dealer, paid content, something like that. I don't know exactly. There's a lot of possibility though. It's one of the reasons I came out here, is because this is a brand that does things really well, and there's just a lot of possibility being out in Texas and doing this stuff. So I love the idea of teaching a class. I really do. DJ Red Light says, understandable, cool, thanks. BYOB. Yeah, BYOB is interesting. People will bring a 6-pack and they'll put their name on it and it goes in the fridge, right? We did have somebody that tried to bring, like, I want to say 7 12-packs, and we had to tell them, look, we do offer a place to put your beverages, but we can only take X number of them because of space, right? So then they realized not to do that. So if you're going to BYOB, don't bring 7 12-packs, right? That's way too much. It's just because we're not going to be able to refrigerate all of it. We can bring it all there and put it aside for you, but not refrigerate all of it. Kevin says it would be really nice to learn on actual table instead of at home. I mean, if you're in Dallas, sure. I also do paid sessions there, so if you learn at home, then you can also come in and work on the table with me one-on-one for a paid session if you'd like. There's so much possibility out here, and it's really fascinating coming to Texas and seeing that a lot of people were sort of trained underground. I still haven't been to an underground room. I find the whole concept to be sort of interesting. It's just, I'm used to casinos running everything, but I give a lot of props to Texas. Like, they love their poker out here. That's for sure. And they love action. And I want to say too, people were buying into this $800 $500,000 guarantee tournament this past weekend, and there was still a ton of action. I mean, people were trying to build up stacks for themselves, and with good reason, right? Like, you needed, in order to chop, you needed like 20 million or more in your stack, I think is what it came down to. But yeah, it's fun being out here. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's see, what else have I experienced as a dealer while I've been here that has been interesting? The 2-5 games out here they play more like 5-10s. They're very, very deep games. It's a match the stack after an hour, $1,000 max for the first hour, and then you can match the stack after that point, the highest stack. And there's a lot of players at these tables that have 3, 4, 5,000. I dealt one hand that was probably one of the sickest beats that I've dealt in a while, where there was about 6 players in for $60 each pre-flop in a 2-5. The flop came out 9 of diamonds, 6 of hearts, 3 of diamonds. So 9-6-3 board. It goes check, check. Player bets 100. A very good player bets 100. Player calls 100. Player calls 100. One player folds, and then the second player that checked rips it all in for 1865. And I'm like, interesting. Original player who bet folds, next player calls for 1865, and then it goes fold, fold. And the guy who called, they talk about wanting to run it twice, and I'm like, okay, then we'll run it twice. The guy who called has a set of 9s, top set, 9-6-3, 2 diamonds. The player who ripped it all in had pocket kings. He did have the king of diamonds. The top board goes runner, runner, diamonds. The bottom board goes runner, jack, king for top set. And the guy who got it in with 2 boards with pocket 9s with top set lost both boards. That was pretty shocking. Every once in a while I'll deal something, I'll just be like, whoa, that was pretty interesting. Let's see. SI says, Is it just poker, or do they have other games? I have a friend in Austin, so planning on visiting that location in the coming weeks for some poker games and whatever else they offer. It is just poker. Different types of poker, but it's a poker room. Yeah, you get your membership when you enter, and then you pay time to play there. Which, some people complain about paying time. It's $13 an hour, and it's cheaper than you pay in rake. I don't care who you are, how tight you play. Like, you're not paying $13 an hour at any poker table that I'm aware of. That's a really good deal. Like, when you take time rake, it's 7, 8, or 9 per half hour. 14, 16, or 18 per half hour is generally what it is. So let's see. I was dealing the hand. Action on the turn. Player out of position is deep in the tank, facing a shove from the heads-up opponent. We'll see the rest in a second. I might have to read that again. SI says, any match to stack? Never mind. Just answered. Yep. The 1-2 games play sort of more like 2-5, by the way. They're pretty deep games. There's a lot of bomb pots. There's a lot of $5 straddles, and the raises pre-flop and the 1-2 no limits they're often 15, 17, 20, 21, 22 pre-flop. So it ends up playing a lot like 2-5 at the 1-2. You can only buy in 300, but there's a lot more people that buy in 300 at these tables than I'm used to. At 1-2 no limit. So the 1-2s play sort of big. Like I usually play 2-5 in most places. I would play 1-2 at Texas Card House, which I have played a decent amount of it, just because the game's still pretty big. Big Swag says, what are the rules for min bets raise size in 7 stud limit with a kill on and off? What are the rules for min bets raise size in 7 stud limit with a kill on and off? Might be better to watch the stud video. Yeah, I don't know if in that particular video I talk about a kill. So I talk about a kill in the Texas Hold'em stuff. It says kills in one of the titles, and I give some insight into how that stuff works. So the reason I don't really talk about it in the bonus mix game stuff for 7 stud limit is because once you learn how a kill works and you learn how to deal 7 stud, you just ask, what's this kill in this game? And like, once they answer it, you're golden. You understand what to do. So I've never personally dealt with as a supervisor. Never dealt or supervised a 7 stud limit game with a kill. But I would assume that it doubles everything if it's a full kill, I'll say. And I would assume that it becomes active if a player wins probably 2 pots in a row, or if they... there's a lot of different ways to possibly do it. I can't say that I know from experience what the kill... So is there a poker room that you're asking about? If there's a poker room you're asking about, maybe we can call them on speakerphone and ask them how their 7 stud kill game is run. I'd have fun doing something like that. I would have to tell them that they're on a live stream call, blah blah blah. But that would be fun. Yes, for a sweep high low. Yeah. So if it's a high low game, if you sweep the whole pot and the pot is over a certain amount, then the next hand is probably going to be Hawaiian Gardens. So they actually have a 7 stud high low kill. All right, let's check it out. I'll get their number and I'll call them right now. What's it called? Hawaiian Gardens. Hawaiian Gardens. I should type poker. It brought me a restaurant. I don't want the restaurant. Oh, it's a casino. All right. All right, so we're going to call them on speaker right now. Oh, I should have done that on my phone. Let's do it here. So the phone number is 562-860-5887. All right, I'm putting this on speakerphone.
Thank you for calling the Gardens Casino. We want to inform you that we are back and open for business. We are also happy to announce that we are now offering poker. Our current games available are 4-8 limit, 8-16 limit, 20-40 limit, 100-200 no limit, 300-600 no limit, 5-1500 no limit, and 15-30 mix. We are also happy to offer you California games, which consist of blackjack, ultimate Texas Hold'em, three-card poker, easy baccarat, fortune paigao,
This
and
is too
paigao.
much. Don't run your
Please
room like
remember to
this.
bring your player's card and valid form of ID. Also, masks are mandatory. Our current hours of operation are 10 a.m. to 5 a.m.
Thank you for calling. If you know the extension of the person you want to reach, you may dial it now.
Oh, man.
I do not understand that request.
I kept hitting
Thank you
0.
for calling. If you know the extension of the person you want to reach, you may dial it now.
All right, I'm gonna have to call this again. I'm gonna get it back to that point. I'll just listen to it for a second while we're doing this. Let's see. While they're talking through all this stuff, next question: what's the best starting stack for a tournament in your opinion, and how do you break it down for 8 players? I'm not gonna be able to multitask this. I'll answer that in a second. Let me see. Nowadays, like if you're talking about a home game, I would say a good starting stack is like 10,000 units, and you start the blinds at 1-1 or 1 and 2 is fine, and then oh, they don't even let you talk to anyone. There's no way to actually talk to them. Let me see if there's a phone number for the poker room. Hawaiian Gardens Casino. What kind of poker room doesn't have a phone number? That's brutal. Oh, let's go here. I'm going to their website now. I don't want to judge them too much yet. Let's see. Contact us. They have a phone number here. Is it the same phone number I just called? Yeah, it's the same phone number I just called, and there's no other phone number for poker. Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, I don't know how they run their game, and there's no way to call them. That was a bit of a bust. That didn't work out the way that I was picturing. But let me talk you through this real quick. So the way that I would envision it for for this, you said it was 7 stud and big O limit, 12-24. I'm guessing, yeah, it's high low. So these are 8 or better games. I would say if a player scoops a pot for you could say somewhere between 10 and 20 big blinds, then it would end the next hand. They have to put out so it would become instead of 12-24, it would become a 24-48 hand. What's going on? Oh, my stream cut out for a second, I think. So it would become a 24-48 hand, which is sort of weird. I feel like 12-24 is a weird limit to play, but like, why not just play 10-20 and then make it easy, right? But okay. Or 12-25 and make it easy. That's sort of my opinion with stuff like this. But anyway, it would make it a 24-48 hand, and the player who won would have to put out 24 on the kill, and you could do it where they act last or something like that. That's how I would probably run it if I were choosing to do it. But also, when it comes to stuff like this, players generally have like their opinion for what they want, and if they're the ones that are playing the game, they might want it to be a certain way, and stuff like that's okay too. Curious, did that make sense? I definitely want to answer this the way that you're trying to get this info, but I don't know what they do, and there's no way to call them. All right, so going back to, you said it's okay, thanks for trying. I appreciate that, but still, ask your question if you want. I mean, we can come up with what I think the right answer could be. What's the best starting stack for a tournament in your opinion? How do you break it down? So I said 10K. I would have it be, 8 1,000 unit chips, 2 500 unit chips, and 10 100 unit chips. That's for like a home game tournament with just you and the crew for 8 players. So it would be 10 chips that are worth 100 each, 2 chips that are worth 500 each, and 8 chips that are worth 1,000 each. And then later maybe you can color up and put some 5Ks in there. If you want to make it a bit deeper, you can do 20K or 15K. 15K you'd add one 5,000 unit chip. 20K you add two 5,000 unit chips. But your blind structure is going to increase over time, and you choose how quickly that happens, both in terms of how long the levels last and also in terms of what the jumps are. So yeah, sort of making sense there. Oh yeah, I was having trouble with the bring in and min bet sizes, especially when door card pairs. Kill made a confusing topic even more confusing. So one thing that's interesting is recently they have been eliminating the ability to double the bet amount when the door card pairs on 4th Street. So if someone has a pair in 7 card stud, traditionally they're allowed to bet the big bet amount instead of the small bet amount. But it was actually one of the topics they talked about in the recent TDA discussion, how Barry Greenstein had a very good argument for why not to do that. And these guys seem to go along with it and agree with it. This is sort of obscure, but it's still pretty interesting, if you're a stud person. And so I would actually say if I'm running a game, I would not even allow that or worry about it. But based on how traditional kills go, I think you're going to get rid of the bring in for the kill, because you've already got a forced bet in there. But maybe you still have to have it, huh? So if you do keep the bring in, I would say that the bring in is probably going to be the same as normal, because the blinds would be the same as normal. In a traditional kill game, the blinds are still going to be the same for whoever has them, and whoever has the kill just puts the kill out in advance. So in a stud game, I would envision that whoever wins the pot, when the kill becomes activated, they put the completed bet out. Maybe they would put the completed bring in out, or the incomplete bring in out, but I would say keep it the same, and then whoever comes in can either bring in or they can complete. But I sort of like the idea better of just having it be, yeah, I guess you got to keep the bring in the same is what my guess is, since the blinds stay the same. Blinds don't change in a kill. That's what I'm trying to say. So I don't think the bring in would change either. So the bring in would probably just stay the same, as I'm like sort of reasoning it out in my head. Let me see. Music Cuber says, well, at the moment I'm doing 20K with blinds starting at 25.50 using a breakdown of 8, 8, 6, 6, and 2. Yeah, that's more. 6 500 unit chips is more than you need. Nowadays, poker rooms don't even use 25 unit chips anymore, even though I sort of have an attachment to them as well. And let me see. With 25, 100, yeah, you said that. I already understood what you meant, though. So if you start the blinds at 25.50, I mean, you're playing incredibly deep for 20K. It's almost like so back in the day, and the day wasn't that long ago, I'm pretty sure in 2003 when Moneymaker won the World Series main event, the blinds started at like 25.25 and everyone got 10K starting units. Because it was $10,000, and then later they doubled it to 20K, and it wasn't until later than that anybody would start with like more than that in chips. So with 25.50 blinds, giving people 20K is just a massive stack. I just don't think it's necessary, honestly. And traditionally, you're going to use 8 1K chips and just 2 500 unit chips. You just don't need all those 500 unit chips. I mean, maybe you can do 4 and 7 or something, but you're saying, and I'm curious if that's acceptable. Yeah, literally, totally acceptable. It's just monstrously deep. So I would have the blinds be like 8 minutes if I'm running that tournament at home. Just because otherwise you're never going to get anywhere. I mean, you have to sort of do the math, right? Like, what's the average stack? Or how many big blinds are there total? If you're giving out 20,000 unit chips, and you do 20-minute levels for these blinds, 20 minutes into this, or an hour and 20 minutes into this tournament, your blinds are going to be 100, 200. You go 25, 50, 50, 100, 100, 200, and then 200, 400. Your blinds will be 200, 400, and everybody still has 20,000 units an hour and 20 minutes into this. So I would say, okay, let's do 8 minutes, right? If you do 8-minute levels, you're looking at about 64 minutes into the tournament, you've gone 8 levels, right? So you're 25, 50, 50, 100, 100, 200. I mean, I guess you could do 150, 300 if you really want to grind it. But let's say 200, 400. I don't know if I have the same right number of fingers up anymore, but whatever. 300, 600. I mean, even an hour in, if you have a 20,000 unit starting stack, you're maybe up to 500, 1,000, or 600, 1,200. Like, that's a lot of big blinds for everybody still, and you're so deep into this tournament. If people start, if you start the blinds at 100, 200, and you do like 10-minute levels or something, I think you're much better off, because then an hour in, you've gone 100, 200. You know, maybe you do 100, 200 with a 200 big blind ante. I would probably skip 150, 300 and just go right to 200, 400, 300, 600, 400, 800, 500, 1,000. You know, this is about an hour in, and 1,000's a big blind. With even with 10,000 starting units, you're probably looking much better off there, because, like, I mean, how long do you want this tournament to go for is really what I'm asking, if it's a home tournament. Then again, maybe you have people that just shove it all in for, 150 big blinds. Home games tend to have stuff that you don't see everywhere. I'm a little bit bummed that they didn't answer at the Hawaiian Gardens Casino. I was sort of excited to take that call. I don't think I've ever done a live call somewhere. Musi says, I'm just wondering because it's my first home game and I really haven't been able to visit a tournament since I started playing in the beginning of lockdown. I'm planning to do 15-minute blinds with 1, 2 small blind antes starting at 100, 200. Oh, 1/2 small blind antes. The tradition in the poker industry is that the big blind pays an ante. So it would be 100, 200, and then the big blind throws out another 200 when you add antes in. And it just, adds a little bit more money to the pot, and therefore encourages action, which is why it's done. Doing it from the small blind for half a small blind ante, it's like, okay. But if you think about it, at the 100, 200 level, there used to be a 25 ante for everybody. Well, if there's 8 players at the table, that's 25 times 8, that's 200. So you get the same amount in the pot for the ante if you have the big blind pay a full big blind amount with 8 players. So that's why they decided to go that route. I don't think it's as strong to do half of an ante on the small blind. And also, you might run into situations where you don't even have a small blind, and then you don't have any ante in the hand, and it's just a big blind. It's sort of weird. In that case, I guess you could have the big blind pay it, but then they're going to have to, what are they going to do? Not pay it on their next hand? It's sort of like a weird thing to manage. I think that 15-minute levels with 25,000 units and 2550 starting blinds is going to be an insanely long tournament. I mean, if you want it to last 7 hours, then that's great, and you can absolutely do that, but that might be an insanely long tournament. Just do the math out and see what the blinds will be out after 3 hours, and you'll be like, oh, okay. Oh, you're saying everybody would post the ante. All right, I mean, that's what people used to do in the industry. A couple years ago, you would see that a lot. I've got someone vacuuming outside. I'm sorry if you guys can hear that. Nothing I can do about it at the moment. So yeah, if you're at 100, 200, it would be 50 for everybody. So, 50 times 8 is 400. It's a lot in there, but that's fine. I mean, it definitely creates action. So let's see. It is 2:43. my time, which is, it's been about an hour and 40 minutes or so, something like that, an hour and 35 minutes of doing this live stream. And I think I am going to wind it down now. So I'm happy to get any last questions in there. Let's see. Big Swag, if you can send me an email, I will get an answer to your question about how to handle a kill in that particular game one way or another. And I will let you know. Alfie says they're not answering the phone because of limited staffing. I'm assuming that that means that you tried calling them too. Appreciate that. Alfie, you got my back. I love it. You guys are awesome. I genuinely mean that. The questions that I get in here, like the details of asking a 7-stud. Well, actually, for Big O limit, I can tell you how that one would go. For Big O, if somebody scoops, they're gonna post the kill, which is the lower limit amount, which is like sort of the new big blind amount, right outside my door. But there's nothing I can do about that. And the blinds are gonna stay the same for Big O. 7-stud. I really do think a kill to bring in stays the same. I thought it through on the spot. Any last questions, I'll answer them. And if not, I appreciate you guys, and we will talk soon. And I will get an answer for Big Swag. I don't know how, but I will get an answer. But it seems like nobody else is asking anything, but I am going to stick around for a couple minutes because sometimes it's like, oh, and then you start typing it, and it's on like a 15-second delay. So I don't want to jam you up too much. I want you to be able to get your questions in, and then I'll take off. And just as a reminder, you can join me in Texas Card House in Dallas. I can deal to you. If you come to the room and you want to say hi to me, do not be shy. I have a lot of people that come say hi to me, but they're sort of shy. And I mean, I don't know where I know you from. Sometimes, like, it could be so many different places, and I don't know if I don't know you. Maybe you know me from YouTube and I don't know you. But say hi to me. I like that very much. You know, tell me the content that you like. Tell me what you've watched. I will definitely be appreciative. I really enjoy those conversations. I've been dealing long enough where you're not going to be interrupting me. You know, if I'm in between hands or something like that, you can even say, hey. Some people say they're shy to do that. It's fine. Don't worry about it. You know, maybe I'll give you a little elbow bump or something. Say, hey, we'll do it together. I'm not just going to elbow you. That would be mean. That would be a reason not to come say hi. Alfie said, Big Swag says bye and thank you. You're welcome, man. Really appreciate the join. And Alfie says, cheers, Mark. Hopefully I can make it out tomorrow. Sounds great. I'll be there tomorrow at about 1 p.m. So I anticipate I'll be there till 7, 8, or 9, something like that. So thank you guys. Really appreciate everybody's questions, and I will see you around.